Hello everyone, welcome. This is week 4 of my weekly web scraper. In this one, we're going to do something slightly different. In my last videos, I've been doing one website, multiple products, but this time we're going to do one product and we're going to do from multiple websites and we're going to save that data. I want to save it to a CSV and we're going to append it to a CSV. There's some cool stuff in here, lots of functions. We're going to clean the data with some regex, and so hopefully you guys enjoy it. So right, let's get started. So I've picked a product here and I've got 4 websites that are selling this product at various different prices. So the idea of this script is that we're going to get the price from each and we're going to save it, and then we would run this code every day and then we would see how the prices change over a period of time. So that's the idea. So what I'm going to do is, the first thing I'm going to do is import in the libraries I'm going to be using. So I know I'm going to be using requests HTML, so I'm going to say from requests underscore HTML import HTML session. So if you don't have this library installed, you can go ahead and pip install it. Just if you do, it's not an underscore in the pip install, it's a dash, just the way that it works. So I'm going to do some testing first. What I like to do is just check to see if the website's going to respond to me. If it doesn't, then maybe we need to do a slightly different approach. But I'm going to create a quick list of URLs so we can loop through each one and then work out whether the website will respond the way that I want it to. I've actually already done this. I'm just going to copy this across because otherwise you're just going to watch me copying stuff out my browser, which is not that interesting. So there we go. So these are the 4 URLs that we just looked at the pages for. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say S is equal to HTML session, because we need to create a session object that we can use to get the data from the server. Now for testing purposes, I'm going to say for URL in URLs, and we want to do R is equal to s.get, because we're using our session, the URL. And then I'm going to print out r.html.find, and I'm going to say title, and first is equal to true dot text. Now all I'm doing here is I'm querying each website, the response that we get for a title element. I'm looking for the first one and I'm just asking for the text. All I'm doing here is just checking to see what data comes back from the website. I find using the titles quite easy because generally speaking, when you're on a product page, if you print the title, it has the product name in the title. If you're getting blocked, you'll get a different style or different title. So you need to have a different approach. So I'm just going to run this and we should get back 4 different titles with the text, and you can see that they all have this product name in. So I'm happy that these are all going to work without having to render any pages or anything like that. So that is good news. So I'm going to leave our URLs list up here just for now, because I know that I'm going to need to copy these URLs again. And what I'm going to do is write a function that goes to this website, does the request, and gets the price data back for each one. So I'm going to remove this. We're going to leave our session. We're going to just move it up one so it's there. So the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to do def to define my function, and we're going to call this one get. Let's call it get price, and the first store, we'll put that name there. And we are going to then say our response that we want for R is equal to s.get, and I'm just going to give it the whole URL. And I'm going to paste it in here. And then we want to return from that function the price of this item. So if we go to the website and we're on this one, we do inspect element and zoom in a bit, and then we get our inspect element tool and hover over the price and click on it. We can see that we have this span here. This has got a weird ID, but the class is simply just product price. This is nice and easy to get with a CSS selector. If it's not quite so simple, I've got a video on CSS selectors that will show you how to go in a bit deeper and maybe get some elements out easier that don't have nice and simple classes or IDs. So I'll link that down below. I'm going to copy the class here, and I'm going to just return out of this function r.html.find, because we want to search the HTML that we got back from our response, and I've already forgotten what sort of tag it was. It's a span, so we can do span, and for CSS selectors, the dot after the tag represents the class. And I'm going to do first is equal to true, and we're going to hope that that returns the right element, and then we're going to do dot text. So that's basically the simplest of the simplest function that we can do to get the price from this page. Now the reason why I'm doing it in functions is so that we can easily apply the cleaning data to each return function that we get. It just keeps it a bit easier to read and a bit easier to understand and manipulate if we need to. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this now, and I'm going to print out what comes back from this function, which is what we are returning here. And when I run this, we should get some information back here. Now we can see that we have the price returned. I'm not too bothered about how it looks right now, because as I said, I'm going to write a whole function to clean up and remove the data that we don't want. So now that I know that this works, let's just move this down a bit, and let's write the next few for the other websites. Let's say get price, and if we keep it all format, it's nice and easy. The next one is gear. So we want to copy, actually we'll just write it out, r is equal to s.get. And here is our URL that we needed for this. I'll delete this at the top once I've copied all these out. And I'm going to make this one smaller so we're dealing with long lines. And we're going to return again r.html.find. So let's go have a look and see where that data is. And we are on this website. Again, inspect elements, over the info. And here we go. We can see we have a span class C-VAL. Nice and easy. This one actually has the data and a content tag as well. So if for whatever reason the text, as you can see, the text is the same as the information in the content equals. If this was a bit more difficult or convoluted, we could just get that out of here. But because it's the same, I'm going to grab the text of this element, and we're going to say it was a span, and the class was that, I think. Yeah. And again, first is equal to true, because if you don't put first is equal to true, it returns a list, and then when you do dot text at the end, you'll get an error. So now we can test this function out, and we'll run it, and hopefully we get the price back, 369. Good. So that one works. I'm just going to collapse these down once they work so we know. So we got one with space. The next one, get price next store. And again, r is equal to s.get, and the URL, let's copy that over, and then return, and it will be r.html.find again, and let's go to that website. Same deal, let's get out of my way. So this one is slightly different. If I just move this open up here, we can see that there's this span here. There's a lot of white space, and it's got this extra text in it. Now, this is quite a long class name, but there's actually an item prop equals to price here. So I'm going to use this attribute tag to get the this element here, because you can see if we hover over the span, it doesn't have the actual data in, whereas the whole of this one does. So I'm just going to copy the word price, and we'll do span. Oh, there needs to be quotation marks. Span. I was doing so well with my typing. And when we want to find an element with CSS selectors due to the attribute, we can just put them in square brackets like this. And we're going to say the attribute was item prop, and we want the ones that are equal to price. Just like that. So let's do first is equal to true, and then dot text. So let's check to see if I got that right. And hopefully we get the price back here. There we go, and you can see we've got this extra information here. That's okay, because as I said, we're going to deal with that in a minute. So we know that one works. Let's go to the next one. Get price west is equal to s.get. Let's grab this URL, and I can finally delete this URL list now. Let's get rid of that. Don't need you. And let's return r.html.find, and let's go and have a look and see where this data is. Got it here, price over here, inspect, and it's here, and we have a nice and simple span class price, and again you can see we've got this item prop price as well, so that's quite useful. But we'll just do the class whilst we're here. Span dot price. first is equal to true dot text, and let's run this one as well to know that that one works. 0. Okay, so what that means is that somewhere else on this page there is a class of price that is returning 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go here again, and I'm going to say let's have the item prop is equal to price. So again, brackets, item prop is equal to price. Okay, let's try that. There we go, 331. So you can see that sometimes you just need to work a little bit harder to find the best way to get that data out of that element. So what we want to do now is we want to make sure that we clean this data up nicely, so when we save it into our CSV file, it's all correct numbers. There's no weird formatting like the one of the ones had the words in there. I think it was this one. So let's go ahead and figure out a way to deal with that. So when I run this one, we can see that we've got all this extra text. So I'm thinking I'm going to use regex for this, and I'm going to basically only let it return digits and this dot in the middle. You'll need to examine your own data to see what will work for you. I'm going to copy this web price bit here, and I've got a regex tester working and open here, and we can see that this is my regex expression, and this was my test string. So let's delete that and paste in the real one. Now what this is basically saying, if I zoom out a bit more, you see it says match a single character that is not present in the list, and this is saying not present, and we're looking for 0 to 9, which is the digits, and I've got the point in there as well, so we pick up the point. If I remove that, you can see it's going to omit the point as well, so we would actually end up with a number that was more like 35,400. But we need that in there. Now if you had data that had extra points in it, you can see that that wouldn't work, so you'd need another way around it. But my one doesn't. It generally only has the price information, and some has this text information. So I think this regular expression, nice and short, nice and sweet, is going to work well for me. So I'm going to copy that out, and we're going to import regex. I'm not a regex wizard, by the way, so sorry about that. And we're going to say, so let's create a new function, and I'm going to call it clean. Now we're going to give it the price information, and then what we want to do is from this, let's give ourselves a bit of space so we can actually see what we're doing. We want to return the good bits of information. And what we're going to do is we're going to use re.sub, which is basically going to give us a new string with only the information that we want by substituting it. And we're going to go and return that from this function. So we're going to give it our data in this function, and we're going to say then we're going to return re.sub, and we can give it our regex here. So we're saying this, and then we need to give it a blank string, so it gives us, because it's going to basically take the information out of the old string and return the new string, and then we can say price because that's the old string that we're giving it. So it's going to basically run the regex as I showed you in the regex explorer here, and it's going to basically take out the bits that we like, or take out the good bits here. You can see the bits that don't match, and it's going to put them into this string, and it's going to return that for us from this string. So to demonstrate that, I haven't explained that entirely well, I apologize, but when you see it working, you'll understand. So if we say we take the return from here, this one which had the whole web text, and we pass it into our clean function, and I'll just print that out. I made a mistake. It's import re, not regex. I always just type the whole thing by accident. If we run that now, we can see that we end up with this is the output from our clean function, 354.00, and the actual one that came back. So we can see just by doing this tiny little clean bit, we can remove the bits of the string that we didn't want. I'm going to go one step further, and I'm going to turn this whole thing into a float, which is a floating point number, which means when it's in our CSV file, it thinks it's already a number, and we will treat it as such. So now when I run it, we actually get 354.0 because you don't get a double zero, but that's fine for us, and that will work just fine. So what I'm going to do now is we need to think about how we're going to export our data and save it into our file. I'm going to remove these. I'm going to collapse this again. So what we've got so far is just getting the data from each site, and we have a way to clean it up. So what we want to do is we want to put all of that together, and we want to export it as a nice neat dictionary, and I'm going to export it with today's date because the idea is we're going to run this every day. So I'm going to do from date time import date. I think it's date. Yeah. And I'm going to just quickly check, and I'm going to do print date dot today, and this should give us today's date, which it does, but this is actually a date time object. So what we want to do is we want to turn that into a string, or that we can actually then export out. Otherwise it would look a bit odd in our file. Our VS Code is just making it look like that because it can interpret it. So I'm going to say today is equal to date.today, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn it into a string using strf time, or string for time, or whatever it is. So if I say print strf time, I believe it's like that, time, yep. And then we can do, actually we need to give it our date object first. So we can do today dot, and now we can give it the format that we want. Now to do that, we need to use our quote marks, and we need to use the % to determine the day, the month, and the year. Now in the UK, we do day, month, year in that order. If you don't have it in that order in your own country, you can do it whatever you like. So basically you do a small d for day, and then we're going to put in a slash, so we want the next one. Again, %, and then a small m for the month, and slash, and then the %, and a capital Y for the year. So if I run that now, you can see that we've turned it into a string object of the 27th of the 3rd, 2021, and that will be exactly how it exports to our CSV when we get that far. So I'm going to leave these two things here right now so we can copy them back when we need them. I'm going to move on, and I'm going to say we're going to create our main function that is going to take all of these functions, it's going to run them, and it's going to return a dictionary object with all of the data in. So let's go and do that. So let's say define our main function, and we're going to say let's put our today inside that because we're going to want that in there, and we're going to do our entry. So this is our data entry, and let's do date, and we're going to copy this because we want this, which we just talked about. And then let's go and remove that from there. And now we want to get each of the data from the functions that we created earlier that gets the data. So it's going to be ANDA is going to be the key, and we're going to say get price like this, except we want to run it through our clean function. So we're going to do clean. There we go. And we're going to copy that down for each of the other ones, and then just quickly change those names. This is where it's quite easy when you have very similar function names. There we go. And the final one, West. Okay. So what we want to do is we'll return entry out of this function, and let's check that, check to see if I did anything wrong, which I probably did, and let's print main. Okay, there we go. So that's going to go ahead, and it's gone out and got the information from each of the websites. It's taken today's date in the string format, which we did here, and we've returned the key, which is the store name, and then a floating point number for the price of that item for each website that we looked at. So that is nice and good. That's how we're going to export our data. So the next thing that we want to do is we actually want to start adding this to a CSV file every time it runs. So the idea is that we're going to use a CSV because of its simplicity, and we are not dealing with a lot of data. We're going to want to upload this code to run on our cloud server and save into a CSV file just in the same directory is fine. And then it's going to append it every time it runs daily to the CSV file. So we should get an entry for every day that it runs with the date and then the prices across. So the keys are going to be our column headers, and the values are going to be the columns of data, the rows of data, sorry, that we get. I'm going to collapse my main function so we can easily work on exporting this to CSV. So we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to we need to append to our CSV, and we need to use the dict writer, because that's the way that we would want to write a dictionary to the CSV file. So I'm going to do from CSV import dict writer, I think. Dict writer, there we go. And we're going to then do a little bit of testing down here before we tidy it all up nice and neatly. So what we want to do is we need to tell it the columns that we are using, which is our keys. So I'm just going to say columns is equal to, and needs to be a list, and we've got the date, then the stores in the order that they appear in our file. I'm missing one. There we go. And now we're going to say with open, because we want to use a context manager, so our file is opened and closed nice and neatly for us. And I'm going to say, let's just call this product data .csv. Now we want to, instead of doing W here for write, which would overwrite every time, we're going to use A, which is for append. And then we're going to say as F for our file. And now we can do, let's do W is equal to dict writer, and we want to give it F for our file, and the field names is equal to the columns that we have specified up here. So this is basically just going to tell it where to put the information. And then we want to do w.write row, and we need to give it entry, which is what's going to come out of our main function. So if we say entry is equal to main, like this, and if we run that, and we can see what I did wrong, nothing. Oh, that's handy. And if we come to our CSV file, you can see that we have the entries that we were expecting. Now there's no column headers for this, but I'm just going to type them in because it's just easy this way, and we don't have to worry about it because we're going to be using this CSV all the time. There we go. So now if we delete that and if we close that and we run it again, we're going to actually add another row to the CSV file. There we go. So this is going to be our sort of pseudo database. I probably wouldn't do this for anything other than small projects, but I didn't want to get too deep into how to create a database. I wanted to give you more of a core concept so that you can take your data and then you can deal with it in the best way that works for you, for your project. If you're doing small stuff like this, where it's more just like a learning exercise, I think a CSV is absolutely fine, or you could use Google Sheets too. I just like doing it this way sometimes because you just get a nice and easy file at the end. And you know what, if some of it corrupts or it doesn't really work out, then it doesn't matter so much because it's more about the learning experience. Okay, so let's close that, hide that bit. Now we want to write a function that's going to save all of our stuff to the CSV file. So what we're going to do is do our new function, and we're going to say save to CSV. That'll do. And we're going to give it the entry, which is the data that we are getting out. And we're going to then indent all of this here. Let's remove the entry part here. And then we can just return out this function. So I'm just going to do the if name is equal to main at the bottom of this, just to get it to run nice and neat. And you never know, maybe we would want to take some of these functions out, like maybe the save to CSV one, if we were expanding this in any other way. So I'm going to do if double_name is equal to main, then we can run our entry is equal to our main function, and then save to CSV our entry. So if I open all these up, we'll just quickly run back through what they've all done, and we can see our full code. I'm actually going to remove the session from the top here, and I'll put it into here as well. So all we've got is we have our 4 shops selling this one product, and with just a simple 2-line function, we can return the data. Collapse those ones. Then with that data that we are returning, we're cleaning it and we're using some basic regex to to basically substitute out and take the numbers out with the dot and then return that. Again, you need to check your data and look up the best way to return it and clean it for you. This just happens to work for these four, so that's good. And our main function, which creates our entry with all of our information, including the date in a string format, and then we're saving it to the CSV file. So that's going to do it for this video, guys. It's already quite long, but hopefully you got some cool ideas, and I've shown you some at least some concepts of how you could do this for yourself. I'm going to set this up to run on my server, and I'm just going to leave it for a bit, and we'll come back and revisit it later down the line, and we'll have a look and see what we got back. If anything, maybe there's some price changes, maybe it failed completely and broke. At least we can analyze what happened, and we can talk about how we can make it better and how to fix it. So thank you very much for watching, guys. Hope you've enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe if you're interested in this sort of content. I've got loads on my channel already and more to come, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye bye.